Hi. To be a democracy or not to be? That is the question. Democracy is a word that's thrown around many times when you are in elementary school. That when you raise your hand, your teacher will say, we're going to count the votes and the most votes wins. That's a democracy. So is it as simple as just counting the votes and the most votes wins? Well, let's see. I'm going to give you some characteristics of a democracy and see if you can guess the country. Ready? This country elects candidates to their local government directly. So that would be like electing to George. And then these individuals are elected to the next level. So then all of the towns choose from there, and the next level and the next level. Sounds like democracy, but is it? This is the way China goes about getting their national leaders. Their leaders start at the local level, and then they are elected to the next level and the next level, and so on. And the last time I checked, China was definitely not a democracy. Well, let's look at this one. This country has a 99% reported literacy rate. Education is a key component to democracy. Does that make this country a democracy? Not sure? North Korea. Yeah, I'm not thinking that that's a democracy. Getting discouraged yet? You'll get this one. In this country, if an elected official accidentally hits a person with his or her vehicle on the way to government business, they will not be held accountable. The crime will go unpunished. That doesn't sound very democratic to me. Sounds to me like that the government leaders are not held accountable to the same laws that you and I are. What country could this be? That's right. That's a law in this country. One more. This country has over 12 competing political parties. The United Kingdom. And actually, in the United States, we have well over 20, 30 competing parties. In this country, all forms of media and internet is controlled by the government. Is this country democratic? No, it is an autocratic government. So let's talk about the characteristics of a democracy. If you will take out your notes, these are the ones with the chart on the front, and you're going to look for the qualities or characteristics of a democracy. Now, I noticed on your notes that I had 5 spots, and there's going to be 6 here. I think number 6 got cut off a little bit. So if you'll just make room for me down at the bottom. Okay? So let's start with the first component of democracy. And these are not in any particular order, so just because it's listed as 1 does not make it's the most important. The first one is individual liberty. Individual liberty in a democracy has to be valued. By that, it means that it is the Bill of Rights for us. Okay? In England, it is the Magna Carta. In countries where they say that individuals have the right to speech, or they have the right to religion or assembly, maybe the right to bear arms, depending on what country it is. But if the individual is not given some key rights that are protected by the government, it is not a democracy. Excuse me. Second characteristic. Majority rules with minority rights. And that means what the majority of the people want is what the government will enforce or carry out. So yes, if you want to go back to elementary school, most votes wins. That in theory is what that means. However, this word right here means that the minority always has a voice. Okay? It might not be something where they get to be heard very often. I mean, that they get to control it, but it means that they get to be heard. Now, one of the criticisms of a modern democracy is that it is no longer majority rules with minority voice. It is minority rights, and the majority has to go along with it. He who whines loudest gets his or her own way. And some people are really frustrated by that. There are some key issues in our country right now that are decisively majority believes a certain way, but the minority has spoken up and is so powerful politically that they drowned out the majority. Next characteristics is free elections. And remember, that means free elections means that nobody has to pay to vote. It is the idea that universal suffrage means that as you saw in most of your countries, the age of 18 and above can vote. That does not necessarily mean that women can vote, because there are still some Islamic countries where women cannot vote, although those numbers are getting fewer and fewer. Notice that it does not say secret elections. That has not come to be a characteristic of democracy. Just that you have the right to go vote without having to pay for it. Okay? Rule of law. This is one of the key characteristics of democracy, that no one is above the law. Equality under the law. So that means that if I get charged with a crime, I would not face any more or any less consequences than if somebody else committed a very similar crime. No one, not the king, not the president, no one is above the law. For me personally, this is one of the pivotal parts of pivotal keys of a democratic nation. And we're going to be talking about rule of law a lot. In fact, if you must know, this is one of the key questions that you will have on your final test at the end of the year. The idea of equality under the law is what the Civil War was about, that blacks and whites and people of color should all be treated the same. And it is one of the reasons that people think that our country is as powerful as it is, and why people come to this country. Okay. The next one is a free and uncensored press. And the whole idea that we do not allow censorship prior to a story going out. Our media and our internet does not submit its stories to the government to be vetted so that the government can give it a thumbs up and thumbs down. And we've had a lot of challenges to this. President Nixon frequently tried to stop stories from going to the newspaper concerning Watergate, and that's not allowed in the United States. So if you have a government that does not allow its press to act independently of the government, then you do not have a democracy. And that's the reason that China does not have a democracy, because it controls its media. And the last one that you're going to need to add is competing political parties. In the United States, we have a two-party system, Republicans and Democrats. And we're going to talk a lot about that throughout this year. We will never go to a bigger political party system because our government is not equipped for it. We have made our election law occur in such a way that it is almost impossible for a third party to come into play. However, the Republicans and Democrats obviously are competing for electoral seats. In other countries, they have multiple political parties, like in the United Kingdom, over 12, and they create what's called coalitions. Alliances. If you watch Survivor or Big Brother, you know that people make alliances to get power. Well, that's what political parties that have, where there are a lot of political parties, that's how those work. All right, so now if you find the section in your notes that are called the soil of democracy, or the basic ideas and principles of democracy. What this means is that democracy cannot continue to work and flourish if the soil isn't present. Okay. Remember that if I go too quick here, you can always use the pause button. First one, popular consent or popular sovereignty. Okay? People are the source of power. Popular means people. Okay? Hopefully you can see my markers going. Popular means people. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union. We have what's called direct democracy, and that is counting the most votes and wins. And that would be an example of like in a bond issue. Right now in Sioux Falls, they are hoping to get some new elementary schools, and so they are taking things to the people. When we built our additional gym on, we had to go to the citizens of George and Little Rock to pay for that increase in taxes. When the casino has to come in, that was direct democracy. Indirect democracy is when we elect our representatives to act on our behalf. Okay? That's not where we all raise our hands and vote. When you are doing your island simulation, you are using direct democracy. You are not electing representatives. Second, soil. Respect for the individual. Each individual has rights that should be respected regardless of race, class, status, or beliefs. This is a country that really stresses individuality. And if you remember from American Lit last year, we emphasized that throughout most of the year as one of the characteristics of what is an American. We read Emerson and Thoreau and the idea that the individual is almost divine according to transcendentalism. Okay. Equality of opportunity. The idea of that everybody has the opportunity to succeed, no matter race, class, or status. In class, we're going to talk a little bit about the Chobani yogurt, but the owner of Chobani yogurt is an immigrant from Turkey, and all he had in his hands when he immigrated here was basically his mother's recipe for yogurt. I didn't know there was such a thing. And he took that and made it into a multi-million-dollar business. And he has always said that the only place that that can be done is here in the United States, because everyone has the opportunity to be successful. And that's what I think brings people to this country, is not equality of condition, where everybody has to have the same house and nobody should have nicer cars than the next person, is that the idea that we all have the opportunity to be as successful as we possibly want, and we're only limited by the dream, limited by ourselves. Personal liberty. This is different than value of the individual. This is, what are your personal freedoms that are guaranteed to you by the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Again, we have a little video here that we're going to watch in class, but personal liberty are personal freedoms. And there's that rule of law again. No one, not even the king or president, is above a law. It truly means that we are all equal under the law. This is the foundation for democracy. Rule of law goes into the legitimacy of law, of whether the law is has any right to be, the procedures, whether people have access to judges, justice, like lawyers, judges, jury. Okay. If you look carefully, these are the countries around the United States that claim, around the world, that claim that they are a democracy. Okay? Those that are in red are the only countries that do not claim that they are a democracy. Obviously, all of them cannot be a democracy. By the way, these countries are, this is Saudi Arabia, there's Yemen in there, I don't remember what this one is, Laos, oh, Holy Hannah, I don't remember what some of these are. Well, most of them are Middle Eastern countries. But notice China claims it's a democracy ruled by the citizens. Cuba claims that it is a democracy. Even some of There's that right there, that little red spot right there is the Vatican. This is a country in Africa. Oh, I don't remember what that one is either. But most of the world claim that they're democracy. But if we hold it up to those soil of democracy and the characteristics of democracy, many of the countries are not democracies. In fact, they are dictatorships, autocratic governments, socialistic governments. So how democratic are we? We want to look at the qualities that we have that make us democratic. And we're going to look at this in class. Does that represent the people? And we will be adding them to our notes. So that's all I have for right now. We will see you at our next class period. Have a great day.